Hi, I'm Don McDaniel, CEO of Canton and Company. Welcome to this episode of Canton Pulse. I'm very excited to introduce my guest today, Verneda Bachus. Verneda serves as the Chief Executive Officer for Friend Health, a federally qualified health center in Chicago, Illinois. For more than 20 years, Verneda has led FQHCs and other organizations through challenging startup, turnaround, and change environments. Verneda, I'm thrilled to speak with you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
First of all, I am honored to be here with you today. So thank you for having me.
Verneda, so let's start. Would you give us a little bit of your background and go a little bit deeper? And I'd love to hear a little bit about Friend Health because you've had an extraordinary experience there, it sounds like.
Sure. So I'm Verneda Bachus. I am the CEO of Friend Family Health Center, doing business as Friend Health. And I'll talk with you about that journey. I have been here since July of 2013. So next month,
10 years.
10 years. We're at 10 years.
We need a party.
And time has flown. So, when you're having fun, it flies by.
Yeah.
When I came to Friend Health, I moved to Chicago from Kansas City, Missouri. I previously was CEO of S1E2 Health Services, which is an FQHC that's been around since 1969. So one of the first in the country. And I moved here to lead Friend Family Health Center. And at the time, Friend Family Health Center was a small FQHC. We had approximately 25,000 patients, unique patients, about 110 employees, and we were about a $12 million a year annual budget. And I saw that in speaking with the board that there were so many opportunities for this organization sitting in the heart of the South Side of Chicago. And, was really excited to be a part of the organization. And over the years, we have grown an organization of 26,000 patients to about 47,000.
Yeah, no. And I was going to comment because the story is really a fantastic story, 10 years and really exponential growth in 10 years. And talk a little bit about how did you really drive that? And, as an example, I know you've got a really fantastic team. And what did team mean to that? And how did you recruit the kinds of leaders that you needed to recruit? And, I'd love to talk a little bit about strategy on this. Obviously, you did some pretty interesting strategic things. Verneda, and I think it's fair to say it's changing now a little bit, but this was not conventional wisdom in the FQHC world. It wasn't like FQs were running around, putting pieces together so that they could do more for their communities, but you did.
So first of all, I have to give credit to the board of directors of Friend Health. The board has been very supportive, and I often say that they do a really good job of balancing the challenge and the support. So they are not by any means a rubber stamp board. They challenge, question, but they support at the same time. So that was a big piece because they also had to approve a merger that they had never done. They hadn't been through that process. And with regard to recruiting the team, that as a CEO, I often say that we do a lot as CEOs. However, there are very few things that we actually do. We have to get it done through our teams. We have to get it done through our executive team, which ultimately, and this will tie into strategic planning, of course, has to flow through the organization. And I learn, it is reinforced with me every day that the executive leadership team is so critical to what we do. For experienced CEOs, I would imagine they can relate to having a vision or having a message or having a philosophy or supporting a culture. And when you talk to the front line, they look at you as though you're talking a foreign language.
Right.
Right, but this should be flowed through the
Yeah.
organization. How
Yeah.
do we do that? So what I have learned, and again has been reinforced over the years, is how critical it is to bring on folks who can catch the vision, can be supportive of the culture that you are wanting to establish and create within the organization. So recruiting folks who, first of all, had the skills and then had the ability to catch the vision and help carry that forward is very, very critical and has been very critical in the success of the organization.
I love what you said, and I think you have in your background, you had a lot of experience in the human capital discipline, right? So that was, I hear you, like a people centered sort of approach to how you think about this. I also loved what you said about, catching the vision and pushing it down, because I think that sometimes, like, I think organizations don't feel like staff level people can understand or whatever, and it's just the reverse. The reality is people are craving, they want to get behind a shared vision, or that kind of thing. I think that's really wonderful. It's interesting that you say this too, because what prompted really, we love talking about strategy and strategy development and planning. At the same time, it's sort of funny because when you talk to leaders about strategic planning, or you just talk in general, some people look at you a little bit like, oh yeah, I got to do that. I hate having to do it, or yeah, we're required to do it, or my board makes me do it, or and there is often, what people call the strategy execution gap. Like, okay, so you work on stuff, or, you get together with your board once a year and you come out, spitting bullets and ready to go, but, not a whole lot really happens. And so we wrote some stuff recently, and we've been calling it the strategic planning paradox. And the notion of the paradox is, hey, it's probably the number one tool in the bag of a leader is strategic planning. A lot of organizations do it, but they fail a lot. There's not a follow through, and we call that the plan do gap. Like, you talk about stuff, or I like to say, a lot of sawdust and no furniture. But talk a little bit about, because of course, team's a big part of it, the vision, the socializing, the crowdsourcing. But how do you make that, what you all vision to do and put the organization ahead? How do you make sure it happens, and you create accountability and you track it? Talk a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind.
Now, that is so critical. And you're right. I do have an undergrad in accounting.
Yeah.
And then late in my career, or mid career, I guess, I went into human resources. And so I have that balance, I believe, a good balance of the financial and the human. And what I have learned and seen and observed is the majority of the folks we work with really want to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But they also want to know what the expectations are,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to articulate what the expectations are. How do we do that without a plan?
Right.
How do we bring folks together so that we can ensure that we are all rowing, in the same direction?
Yeah.
Without a plan, that is so difficult to do. So I believe it is really important to one, to develop the plan
Mm-hmm.
so that you're not all over the place. And I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you from experience, I've had the luxury of having a plan, but I've also had the challenge of working either with a plan that is not so well established,
Mm-hmm.
or a plan that is just, that really you almost really have to set aside so
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
deal with what is happening. One of the other things that I've learned is everyone may not agree. However, if they understand the why, then there's a decision point. understanding the why, even if I don't agree, then I at least have an idea as to
Yeah,
why we're moving in this direction.
that's a great point. I mean, look, I think it feels a little bit like we've gotten somewhat away from personal responsibility, but the person has to create the value too, that person that's in the center of that. So, talk a little bit about how you all as a team, as a leadership team or otherwise, how do you start thinking about, okay, and I've heard people describe the strategy as sort of the stuff that we don't do it every day. We're running the business every day. So if we don't document the big things that can really change the game for our patients, okay, or whatever, then we're not going to do them, right? So we're sort of like, okay, how do we advance the ball? How does your team think about, we could really do a lot more? That is a common thing, by the way, I hear in health centers. A lot of this, hey, how we get ahead is tied to how we can help more people, how we can do more work, how we can serve more folks. So how do you guys plan for that as a team?
What we have done most recently is we've attempted to, and I believe we're successful,
Yeah,
to identify what is, for lack of a better term, the North Star. What
yeah.
what
Oh, love that.
is
Yep,
what's the it?
yeah.
What is it that we are all rallying around? And we identify that, and then as we are looking at, because as you know, there are people calling every day, all day. Can you do this? Can you do this? Will you partner on this? Will you partner on that? Well, and what we have attempted to do is basically have a set of questions. Does this move us forward in accomplishing those goals?
Mm,
That goal. Can we hit our target
yeah.
if we do this? Is this distracting to
Mm-hmm.
us?
Mm-hmm.
And there are some tough decisions that have to be made
Mm-hmm.
often, where we
Mm-hmm.
say it just doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have to say that internally to some of
Mm-hmm.
the team.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to say that to board members. Sometimes we have to say that to funders.
Yeah.
If it is too distracting and it takes away from us moving forward strategically, then we have to say no. So we attempt to ask the hard questions,
Yeah.
establishing the why,
Right.
having the data to support how you're moving forward, and then taking the time to have that robust dialogue, and be willing to be disruptive. We
Yes.
really,
Yeah.
I believe, have created an environment where we can challenge each other, and then come to some point of agreement, and move forward to support that overarching goal.
I really liked what you said about asking why and sometimes why not. Like sometimes the answer is to not do things,
That's right.
it's to do less or, eliminate something that you're doing. So, again, a lot of awareness. It sounds like also your North Star comment, fidelity to your mission. Like,
Mhm.
why are we
That's
here?
right.
What are we really trying to do here? What would you say, Verneda? You've had a really dynamic and still have a dynamic career. You're not past the hill, right? But you've done a lot. But when you talk to young leaders and this topic comes up about strategy and alignment and accomplishing things, what are you telling people? What kind of advice do you give other leaders?
You know, one I encourage them to, first of all, don't be timid. Sometimes you may be out there alone. You can't be afraid to do that. But the other thing is to grow every day. Growth and development every single day. I have this saying that I often say: if you keep your eyes and ears open, you'll learn something new every single day. And sometimes I have to remind our staff and others that we have, as a federally qualified health center, we have a target population.
Yeah.
I have to remind the board of that when we're
Yes.
doing strategic planning,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, oh, we should be doing this and we should be
Yeah.
doing, but
Yeah.
we have we're here for a
You're
purpose.
serving a group. Yeah. Right.
We do, and so keeping that focus is a discipline.
Yeah.
And it goes back to growth and development,
Yep.
continuing to develop oneself and the organization. It's a discipline, and I believe the more we educate ourselves, the more experiences that we have, then that discipline, I believe, is a part of that process.
Well, that's a great way to end our time. We're stalking you. We can't wait to see what happens next. Really enjoyed this time together. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Verneda.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of Canton Pulse. Canton Pulse is brought to you by Canton and Company, the leading strategy, performance, and growth optimization firm focused exclusively on the healthcare industry. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. For more episodes and resources, visit us online at cantoncompany.com. Thank you, and I look forward to sharing our next episode of Canton Pulse.